Our panellist, Jessie Harman, has been a Rotarian for 17 years and was District Governor in 2010-11. She has served as Rotary Coordinator and Project Lead for the Rotary Membership Plan. Jessie was a training leader and is presently the seminar trainer at Rotary's International Assembly. It's now my very great pleasure to introduce our panellist, past District Governor Jessie Harman. Over to you, Jessie.
Thanks, Kero. It's lovely to be with you, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to strengthen Rotary in your district. I'm really coming to you from a very soggy Victoria. We've had a lot of rain this weekend, although Ballarat itself, where I am, hasn't been too hard hit, which is good. I'm very pleased to be with you today to really talk about engaging modern volunteers, and specifically, I guess, the changing landscape for volunteers. I thought I'd talk about three things, really. Firstly, just the changing nature of volunteering. I mean, the modern volunteer is different, and we need to be able to respond appropriately to be attractive. So I'm going to talk about the changing nature of volunteering. I want to talk a little bit about how some Rotary clubs are responding, because there are some very good examples of best practice out there. Potentially we need more of these examples, but I do want to touch on some of the things that I'm seeing clubs do to be attractive to the modern volunteer. I guess I want to finish though just by recognising that amidst all the change that's happening in clubs, there are some fundamentals of Rotary that really will keep us strong. It's not all about change. There is some very good foundation here as well. When I finish this webinar, what I'm really hoping is that listeners will have a sense of sort of some of the changes that are occurring and feel more equipped to go back to the clubs and have a conversation about how they can make their clubs more relevant. So let me get started, and let me start with looking at those changing trends. And to do this, I'm going to draw on perhaps two main reports. One is the United Nations State of the World's Volunteering Report, and also the recent report by Volunteering Australia that looks at the changing volunteer landscape. And I'm going to talk about 5 key trends, and I've listed them there on that slide. Digital volunteering, skills-based volunteering, workplace-based volunteering, cause-based and episodic volunteering. And some of you will be very familiar with each of these, and I'm going to go through them one by one. As I go through them, I'd really encourage you to think about what these changes mean in the context of your club and things that you are doing in your club to respond to these changes. And maybe at the end of the webinar, when you ask questions, you might even want to share some of the things that you are doing at that time. So let me get started and look at that first trend, which is around digital volunteering. I think all of us are very aware of the rise of internet and social media, and we can see how they are sort of impacting on our lives in lots of different ways, and they're impacting on volunteering as well. And I guess we see this impact in 3 main areas. Firstly, we know that individuals and even organisations are using the internet and using social media to locate volunteering. So if you have a particular passion or a cause that is dear to your heart, you can use the internet to connect with other like-minded people and, more importantly, the causes that you seek to support. Secondly, we actually see the internet being used as a platform for volunteering. And you can see on this slide that I have included a snapshot of a platform that individuals can use to actually volunteer from home. This is called micro volunteering. So individuals can log into this website, they can identify causes or passions that are dear to their heart, and they can physically volunteer over the internet. I mean, literally from from their home in their pyjamas. And I've got to say, Saturday morning at 10 a.m, that might have some appeal to some of you. I guess the third way that volunteers use the internet is to give and to support causes. Some of you may have used GoFundMe websites. I know I certainly did, to support somebody involved in Movember. So individuals are using the internet to give funds, to give time, to give resources and to support causes. So the internet is actually fundamentally changing the way that people volunteer. So if that's digital volunteering, let me move to skills-based volunteering, because that's a second key trend that's having an impact on us all. And I guess skills-based volunteering is the way that individuals and groups of individuals can use their special skills to support others. You see this occurring in a whole range of areas. Frequently it'll involve teachers, engineers, medicos, community development consultants. I've identified Engineers Without Borders here on this slide. You would be familiar with Médecins Sans Frontières. I spoke with a young person during November who was with Economists Without Borders. So these are just ways that often professionals can use their particular skills to support passion, to support causes that they are passionate about. And so the rise of skills-based volunteering is the second trend that is definitely changing the landscape for volunteering. The third trend is workplace volunteering. Some of you may work for organisations like mine, a university, Federation University, which actually encourages its employees to get involved in volunteering. I mean, broadly speaking, we call this corporate social responsibility, and organisations will engage in corporate social responsibility for a range of reasons. To develop skills of its staff, frequently to build teams, but equally to enhance the reputation of the firm. I mean, in Australia, for instance, there is an annual report which just identifies the state of corporate social responsibility in Australia, and there is a similar one for New Zealand. And I've just included there the top 10 CSR organisations in Australia. Now that's not bad for reputation for those 10 people, but we're certainly seeing the rise of workplace-based volunteering. The fourth trend, I guess, is one that's challenging for us quite particularly, and that is the rise of cause-based volunteering. So increasingly, and particularly young people, are volunteering based on causes and passions that they prefer. So they are people that volunteer in very specific ways and in very focused ways, focused on causes, passions, organisations that they seek to support. And I've included here one campaign, the Live Below the Line campaign, which is part of the Oak Tree Foundation, a foundation for young Australians devoted to eradicating poverty. We are certainly seeing the rise of cause-based volunteering. I think the challenge for Rotary is that cause-based volunteers are much more likely to focus on the cause and much less likely to invest in the organisation. And when I think of Rotary, and an organisation that relies on having a president and a treasurer and secretary and committee members, I see that may be a challenge for us all going forwards. So cause-based volunteering is the fourth trend. The fifth and final trend that equally I think is challenging for us is the rise of episodic volunteering. Now this represents the volunteering that is people just dipping in and out of service as their lifestyle and interests dictate. And I think we can all recognise that. When we've got time, we'll do it, and we'll do it, you know, where we feel really inclined to serve. And I think the challenge for us is that this model of service, this dipping in and out of service, isn't particularly well aligned with our sort of week-by-week regular model of volunteering. So those are the 5 key trends that are occurring in the volunteering landscape. They're not just about demographics. It's not just about young people. It's also about modern, busy lifestyles that affect us all. I think in terms of these 5 key trends, I think it's worth picking up on a couple of other themes that come out of the research on modern volunteering, because I think they're also very relevant. I've identified some of the key findings there, and these are very common themes. One is the mismatch that occurs between people's interests and volunteering roles. And you will hear modern volunteers talking about the fact that they can't find roles that enable them to pursue their interests and their passions. Another common piece of feedback, or another common theme in the research, is around the lack of timely response to volunteers' inquiries. So a volunteer decides he or she wants to commit, makes an inquiry frequently through the web, and there is not a timely response. Now, I suspect this would apply to us as well when I look at response times in relation to Rotary's membership leads, and we can talk a little bit about that further on. The research also identifies some other deterrents, and I've listed the 3 main ones there. One is around lack of flexibility. The cost of volunteering is another significant theme, and equally burdensome administrative requirements. And some of these may resonate with you. It's interesting that all of the research tends to come up with the same conclusion. And it really is that individuals want more flexible opportunities for volunteering and more meaningful volunteering roles. I guess all of that really raises an obvious question, and that is, how are our clubs and Rotary more generally, how are they responding to these changes? So let me talk now briefly about some of the ways that I see clubs responding to the changing volunteering landscape. I'm going to start with just some simple changes that I've seen, and then I'm going to move on to sort of more complex changes that I see clubs making. I won't have seen all the changes by any means. You may be aware of others, and you may like to contribute those at the end of the webinar. By and large, the changes that I see do give me confidence about the future of Rotary, and I think they certainly provide wonderful examples for us all. So let me start by identifying some of those more simple changes that I see. And I guess I've categorised these changes as changes designed to increase flexibility. So, I'm seeing any number of clubs that are reviewing their rituals and traditions and trying to ensure that their clubs are sort of modern and responsive and attractive to modern volunteers. Similarly, I've seen clubs changing meeting times to be more responsive to busy working people. And I have been impressed with the clubs that have had the courage to alternate meeting times, breakfast one week, lunch the next, for example, to meet on weekends, for instance, which are more suitable for busy people. Similarly, I've seen clubs change meeting formats. For instance, meet first and eat afterwards, and eating is optional. And I guess to make designed to make Rotary more affordable for volunteers. Similarly, I've been impressed to see clubs changing their committee structures and operations, again, to increase flexibility, but also to increase effectiveness, to make the club more responsive and more impactful for volunteers, who are busy and who have many priorities in relation to their time. And I guess most importantly, I'm really heartened by the clubs that are seriously trying to focus on engagement rather than attendance, to recognise that this sort of weekly in and out model of attendance is just not particularly aligned to the needs of the modern volunteer. So these simple changes that I'm seeing do fill me with confidence that we can become more flexible. In addition to those sort of more simple measures that I see clubs taking, I am quite heartened to see the increased range of ways that people can engage with Rotary. And I think all of these changes really provide for greater flexibility, less formality, and they also open up Rotary to people that would never join us in a conventional form. I mean, there are a number of clubs, for instance, like the Rotary Club of Melbourne, who have embarked on corporate membership, and have done that purely and simply to take advantage of this modern trend towards corporate social responsibility. Corporate membership makes Rotary available to people that would never join us in a traditional format. Similarly, the clubs engaging in associate membership, I guess providing opportunities for people to try before they buy, for instance. Or the Rotary Club at Sydney, Darling Harbour, for instance, that established a Rotary community core of Nepalese citizens who join with the Rotary Club to raise funds for their Nepalese family and friends back at home in Nepal. Again, just another way of making Rotary more accessible. And there are, of course, any number of Rotary clubs that have friends of Rotary groups who just lend a hand when needs emerge, again, enabling people to work alongside us. And I guess finally, I've been very pleased to see clubs engaging in more outwards-facing service projects, service projects that enable non-Rotary volunteers to work beside us, shoulder by shoulder, and see what we do. See the most exciting part of what we do. I know the clubs here in Ballarat, the 7 clubs here, join together once a year to run the swap meet. I don't know whether you've ever been to a swap meet. It's lots of junk, in my opinion, but it's incredibly important treasure to others. Our swap meet brings 30,000 people to Ballarat, raises more than $100,000 that we can use in the community, and brings together 700 volunteers. And that's the exciting part of the project for me, because only 300 of those volunteers are Rotarians. The rest are volunteers from other groups in the community, just other community citizens. And they get to see us as Rotarians engaging in a great community development project. And again, those things fill me with confidence. Finally, it's terrific to see new types of clubs emerging. I can't help thinking that the e-clubs that have arisen in recent years, seem particularly well suited to our busy lives. There are a number of clubs now that we would call hybrid clubs. They meet face-to-face some weeks, but they use the internet and meet online in other weeks as well. Similarly, we have satellite clubs, clubs within clubs, or small groups of people banding together in communities not large enough to have a Rotary club in its own right. It's particularly interesting to see the number of satellite clubs that have been established by more traditional older clubs who've decided that they can't attract young people in their own right, but can attract a group of young people together. I was very excited to see the rise of a cause-related club in New Zealand. So we have the E-Club of Water and Sanitation in District 9980. So a very specific cause-based Rotary Club. And I think we're going to see more and more of those. Maybe we'll see the Rotary action groups become more like clubs in their own right. I think it will be interesting to speculate. And I am delighted to see the rising number of youth-focused Rotary clubs. You know, they look nothing like our conventional Rotary clubs. They are typically much more flexible, much less informal, or much less formal. And, you know, I think they give us insights into what Rotary clubs in the future may look like. So, you know, new flexibility, new ways of engaging with Rotary and new types of Rotary clubs, all I think as a response to the changing nature of volunteering. Perhaps just let me finish recognising one last trend, and that relates to digital and social media. And again, I think we're seeing clubs do some really interesting things in this space. I think we need to do a lot more, but I think we're certainly seeing some good practice. You know, we're seeing clubs use websites and social media to enhance their operations. You know, we're seeing clubs using technology to resource or to source resources. I mean, the Rotary Club of Melbourne Park, for instance, uses Meetup, a social media platform, quite extensively as a way to connect with volunteers. You know, certainly we're seeing clubs like, for instance, the Rotary Club of St Ives that uses GoFundMe quite extensively, raising funds for its projects. Certainly, clubs are getting good at using social media in particular to promote their projects and their clubs to the broader community at large. And I think the social media platforms provide an excellent way for us now to retain contact with our program alumni. You know, and we have so many wonderful prospective members in our alumni from RILA, from RIPEN, from Rotary Youth Exchange. And social media enables us to stay connected with those people better now than we've ever been able to do. And it is really interesting to see, for instance, Rotary itself using digital platforms so well, both to promote projects, as we do through Rotary Ideas, but also to attract funds and volunteers, you know, and other resources as well, as you can see there, materials and partners. So there are some really wonderful examples of things that clubs are doing to respond to the busy modern volunteer. You know, arguably we need to do much, much more, but there are some good examples there. But I guess amidst all of this change, I do want to recognise that there are some fundamental pillars of Rotary that put us in good stead for our future. You know, I think our focus on vocational service, you know, our focus on business ethics as part of that, make us a very suitable vehicle for skills-based volunteering, for instance. You know, our core values of service, fellowship, diversity, leadership, integrity, you know, they're values that are as needed now as they ever have been, arguably more needed now. You know, similarly, our emphasis on youth development, you know, the marketer in me says that is absolutely our pipeline for the future. And it is a great pipeline to have. You know, and finally, our Rotary Foundation, people and organisations will always mobilise where the money is, you know, and our $1 billion foundation is a wonderful platform for growth. So I guess to finish, what I'm saying is really that the nature of volunteering is changing. You know, and for Rotary, as we approach our second century of service, we have to be attractive to the busy modern volunteer. And this isn't just about changing demographics. You know, it is about being responsive to modern busy lifestyles, no matter what the age of the volunteer. Volunteers absolutely want more flexibility about how they volunteer, and they want more meaningful volunteering roles. And I guess it's our responsibility to find those opportunities for Rotary. But as I said, amidst all this change, we have a strong platform to keep us well. So I'm hoping that you are all thinking about your clubs and thinking about how we can be more attractive to today's modern and busy volunteer, because Rotary is a great organisation and is a great platform for the future. So, Kero, that's me. I'm back to you to see if there are any questions from the listeners.
We certainly do have some questions here, Jessie. In fact, I might just start off with one that is very close to home for me. My own club used Seek volunteers, to be more specific, to attract volunteers to help us with our club projects. And we've, as a consequence, have a group of volunteers who aren't really interested in doing stuff like coming to meetings, but they are very keen to help us out actually doing hands-on volunteer work. So have you seen many other clubs using Seek or Seek volunteers?
Well, I haven't, and that is wonderful. That is wonderful to hear about. And I think in time, Rotary will find a way for these people to connect more formally with the organisation through membership. But in the end, volunteering is the winner. Kero, I think that's a fabulous idea, and I think we will see more of that in time.
Do have a question here. The question relates to engaging with alumni of club programs. So, and I'm thinking this is particularly youth development programs.
Yep.
Do you have any particular suggestions about the methodology to use for that?
Okay. I've certainly seen clubs using Facebook very effectively, creating Facebook groups. I've seen clubs and districts that will communicate on a sort of semi-regular basis, not really frequently so that they're inundating people, but on a semi-regular basis, communicating news about Rotary. I've seen clubs that have been very good at helping program alumni connect with the big Rotary program alumni on the RI website, which means they're also getting more information and more opportunities to participate. I think that's a very good thing to do. I've heard of districts that have held sort of annual events for Rotary alumni with more or less success. But I think certainly as just individual clubs, staying connected, sharing information about the clubs and projects from time to time, inviting them to particular events from time to time. I think even just those simple things, Kero, can make a difference.
Thank you, Jessie. I have another question here. From Ian, when you talk about alumni, do you also keep up relationships with the parents of youth who have taken part in our activities and competitions?
I have had any number of Rotarians tell me that their most recent members were parents of youth exchange students. Look, I think the reason alumni will join us is because they feel beholden to the organisation and would like to give back. And I think parents of alumni, particularly youth exchange, absolutely feel the same way. So, yes, I commend that completely.
Fantastic. Now, some clubs have organisations or informal groups known as Friends of Rotary. Do you see value in building those groups as support volunteer sort of networks?
I do, Kero. I know that there are some people who are concerned that if clubs have large Friends of Rotary groups, people won't become Rotarians. But I don't think we're actually seeing that happen in practice. I think on a very pragmatic level, in some of our clubs where members are ageing, it is important to have Friends of Rotary who can help with hands-on projects when they're required. I think Friends of Rotary groups do sometimes also provide a respectful way of exiting for older Rotarians who feel they can't contribute regularly anymore but would still like to stay connected. And I also just firmly believe that in the end, volunteering in communities are the winners, So I'm not concerned about Friends of Rotary groups. I think we need people who will help us get work done. I think it provides an opportunity for people to try us out, to see what we do. I think in time we'll find a way to make those people members. I mean, we may not have that model yet, but I think it will come in time. So I wouldn't hesitate. Is my personal view.
Thanks, Jessie. Looking at young people who are passionate about particular causes, and this is a question from me. I have a view of Rotary as a movement or a set of causes. If you look at the things we do, you could articulate any number of elements within Rotary that are causes in their own right. Do you think there's value in promoting the idea that Rotary is open to supporting new causes as a means of attracting new members and new volunteers?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is a bit of a challenge for us. I think there are a lot of clubs that engage in busy work that isn't necessarily impactful work. And I think we all have to think about that a bit. Rotary provides the most wonderful smorgasbord of causes. I mean, you've only got to think about our 6 areas of focus. We absolutely have those opportunities. I think we need to promote them more actively. And I think we really need to think about the way that we volunteer and trying to find larger, more impactful projects that make a difference. I suspect if we want to attract younger people, we have also got to be willing to embrace the causes that matter to them, like youth suicide, like mental health, like marriage equality, sort of areas of focus that may not naturally be the things that we go to in our 50s and 60s and 70s. But if we want younger members, we are going to have to support the causes that matter to them.
So if I could paraphrase that a little bit, Rotary needs to develop perhaps more of a passion for what's contemporary.
Well, I think so. And we certainly, we do see pockets of that, Kero. I'm always impressed by the Rotary Club of Maryborough here in central Victoria that decided 5 years ago that if Rotary International could eradicate poverty, then the Rotary Club of Maryborough would eradicate family violence in its community. Now, that club has galvanised around its Say No to Family Violence campaign. It's brought Rotary and that club international and national recognition. The President last year was invited to speak to a Royal Commission into family violence. We see clubs doing it. And, that club has just completely turned itself around. It's had membership growth, it's got more women. There are wonderful examples of it. We just all need to think about how we can have more impact.
And be relevant to our communities.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
A huge thank you to you, Past District Governor Jessie, for an absolutely excellent presentation.
Yeah, my pleasure, Kero. I want to thank all the Rotarians that have joined us at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning and given up family time. So I'm delighted to be involved, and I'm thankful for all the work that you are all doing to keep Rotary strong.
Farewell, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.